My name is Antigone Oreopoulos, and I'm the daughter of Dimitrios Oreopoulos. Dimitrios was born in Alexandroupolis, Greece on May 24th, 1936, and he passed away on April 28th, 2012. My dad is considered one of the founding fathers of peritoneal dialysis, one of the giants in nephrology. And this was an immense contribution to medicine and society, but as his daughter, I wanted to share what I thought his real legacies were. For a number of years before he passed away, maybe 5 or 6 years, my dad would share these emails with his friends, colleagues, and family. He must have had hundreds on this list, and I think the word is spamming. He would spam his friends, his colleagues with these email forwards. They would be anything from a video or music or an article or a message, something that resonated with him. And he would add his thoughts to the email forward and he would send them out. And they came almost daily. And while they were mildly annoying when I did have them, I miss them terribly now. And before he died, I thought that I would like to carry on this tradition. So I asked him if I could sort of do some practice runs and keep this legacy going. I think we only did 2, and one of them he didn't even send out because he didn't think it was to his standard, I guess. And that was fine because it didn't really feel authentic for me either. So we just let that go. But I realized that I think I do carry on this tradition in my own way, because I too spam my colleagues and friends and family with poetry. Usually my own, but sometimes others, and sometimes the videos of when I'm performing poetry. And those are my thoughts and what resonates with me. And I know my dad was a big supporter and had a huge appreciation of art and beauty. And I think those emails were his way of making the world a little brighter, which I think is what I subconsciously try to do as well. In 2012, when my dad was dying from cancer, Sarah Pritchard and Robert Parkinson of Baxter International did something pretty amazing. They put together this memory book for him, and I only discovered of its existence just recently, while preparing for this video. And so they asked his colleagues that worked with him for over a 30-year time span at Baxter to share some letters and photos and thoughts of him, memories in this book. And going through this was an indescribable experience. But what's interesting is that I noticed there were definitely words to describe my dad that were consistently used by different people around the world. And these words were passion, honesty, enthusiasm, faith, love, and I'll add my own too, fearlessness and relatable. And I say fearlessness because he was unafraid of solving big problems. And I remember the day that I learned that lesson, because I think I was still in grad school and trying to figure out my education and career path. And there was someone that was recruited to the University of Alberta Hospital that my dad thought would benefit me in talking to learn about opportunities. And he said, why don't you just email him, reach out and see if he will sit down with you to discuss this. And I said, I can't email him. And because, he was like a big deal. And my dad said, well, the worst thing that can happen is that he won't answer you, or he will say, no, I don't want to meet with you. And that's not that bad. So do it anyway. And I did. And that was the lesson after that. I was never afraid to talk to anybody or ask them questions or approach them. And he was so relatable. He could have a conversation with anyone, and he always talked to anyone in a respectful manner. He could relate to anyone, no matter their age, their background, their religion. And even though he had very deep convictions with his own religion, he loved talking to other people about their views and their ideas, and he was always so open to. I think that's why he was such a good innovator, because he was always open to ideas from other people. And so I wanted to read a few of the pieces from some of the letters that were in this memory book. And this one's from Sarah Pritchard. Something you do not know is that I have 3 times nominated you for the Order of Canada. I have never nominated anyone else. In my mind, you have been the physician in our discipline who stands out above the others in making a difference for patients around the world and in bringing honor to our country. This is from Clifford Holmes, who's a scientist at Baxter Healthcare. By far, the biggest boost to my career came when we were both at a Baxter Consultants meeting in Scottsdale, Arizona in the early 80s. I decided to make a presentation on biofilm and its potential role in catheter-associated infection. The talk went well, and then you walked up to me and invited me to write it up as a review in the Peritoneal Dialysis International Bulletin. This published review brought me so much exposure and subsequent invitations to talk and write. It really was the launching pad for my career, both at Baxter and in the field of peritoneal dialysis. Dimitri, thank you for that. And this is from Andreas Trineus, a consultant at Baxter. Despite the fact that our interaction only lasted half a day, it had indeed a truly long-lasting impact, as 6 months later, December 12th, 1978, the first CAPD patient received his first bag in Stockholm. I also know for a fact that a similar Oreopoulos effect was seen in many other units around the world. Consequently, I am convinced that the widespread increase in utilization of continuous PD seen over the last 30 years would not have happened without Dimitrios' energy and enthusiasm for PD. In the context of recognizing this lifetime achievement, there is one specific aspect that needs to be highlighted: his strong leadership. Even in the early days, i.e. over the first 15 years, promoting PD was hampered by 1, lack of appropriate outcomes data, 2, high peritonitis rates, and 3, by questions and issues around the adequacy of the treatment. However, during this time, I never heard Dimitrios question the reliability of PD. It appears that somehow he just knew that the time would come when we, based on new evidence, would be able to conclude that with respect to patient survival, PD is at least as good as hemodialysis, which is where we are today. Another way to express this would be to say that without his genuine passion for PD, I doubt that PD would have reached today's acceptance level or success. And this is from Bent Lindholm in Stockholm at Baxter. On the occasion when you were honored by an honorary doctorate in medicine in Poznan, Poland in 2006, I wrote, "Some words come to mind when I think how to best characterize Dr. Oreopoulos. One word is passion. I once read that in the old Greece, the most important question asked about a man's life was, did he have or feel passion? Another word that comes to mind is sincerity or honesty. You can always be sure that what he says can be trusted. This is, of course, very important in science, but also very important for excellent contact with the patients, colleagues, and others. A third word is Greece. Although Dr. Oreopoulos is living in Toronto, Canada since 1969, he is still very much a Greek Canadian, or perhaps a Canadian Greek. I think his Greek ancestry has inspired him and his work in many different ways, and for sure he has many similarities to the archetype Greek physician who always paid attention to do good and never harm the patient." And Jim Moberly from Baxter. "It is not so common for a non-physician to accompany a physician on rounds, so it was a unique experience for me to visit patients with Dr. Oreopoulos. A diabetic double amputee on peritoneal dialysis? One would think, how much worse can it get? I was truly amazed by the good-natured, compassionate, even humorous conversation between patient and doctor. The patient seemed to have not a care in the world. Here was white coat hypertension in reverse. The mere presence of the doctor dispelled his ills. And finally, Ed Vinesh, a former statistician from Baxter, who I should also thank because he helped me with my own statistics during my PhD. I recall with great fondness how you and I would often get together at the meetings, perhaps at a dinner or just a quiet moment during one of the breaks, where we would discuss our love and admiration of the ancient Greek philosophers and just how much they have shaped Western civilization. I can still see that sparkle in your eyes and that incredibly authentic, warm, and loving smile you had when I told you I had majored in both mathematics and philosophy, and as an undergraduate, and how enamored I was and am with Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. A smile which, by the way, is always present with you, and one that causes me to smile as I write this. Thank you, Dimitrios. In 2012, when my father was dying of cancer, I was flying back and forth from Edmonton to Toronto. I was still in grad school at the time, and I've been separated across the country from my family since 18 or 19 years old. But because of that, I believe that actually brought our father-daughter relationship closer, because we emailed each other almost every day. Usually short emails, but sometimes long. And because we had that constant communication, we became very close. And the last day that I made that last trip from Toronto to Edmonton, where he was very close to going into a coma, I flew back, and I was informed when I got back that he was in a coma. And then that night, it was about 11 p.m., my mother phoned to tell me that his heart was stopped and he had died. And in that moment, for whatever reason, divine intervention, I was compelled to look through our email correspondence. And these would have been hundreds of emails over the years. And somehow my eyes fell on this one that was written about 7 or 8 years earlier that I don't think I even looked at the time. At least it didn't look very familiar, probably because I was young and self-absorbed and didn't take the time to read this beautiful response. But the email was a response to my question asking him how he feels about death and if he is afraid of dying. And he wasn't sick at that point. And it's an amazing letter. I read it at his funeral, and it's published online in the PDI bulletin. And I'll read just part of it because it's really beautiful. Thank you for this, Antigone. I am pleased to see that you have existential anxieties that we all have, and that are there to help us become better people. Yes, I am afraid of dying, though whenever I try to specify what exactly I am afraid of, it is difficult to characterize. Maybe the pain that comes with it, though medicine has been able to control this to a great extent. I believe that we are afraid of separating from the things and persons to which we are attached, and to a large extent, the disappearance of our ego that we spend all of our life to build up, and then we just cannot believe that it disappears. It was said that we have to deny ourselves to find ourselves. Therefore, faith in the afterlife should be an answer to this fear, though the fear is often still there. A very famous saint was advised in an insight and was still advising his followers, keep death in your memory, but do not despair. The memory of death helps us to live our lives to the fullest. Finally, you talk about the point of life. I believe that you are already working your point. The important thing is not to miss the journey of your life by worrying about its destination. Please do me the favor to read and reflect upon the poem Ithaca by the Greek poet Kavafis. After you read it a few times, you will understand that the point in our life is not the destination, but the journey itself. I believe that you have already had an exciting journey with so many experiences. In my case, I have had many ups and downs in my own journey, but now at the age of 71, I look back and think how exciting my journey has been. I would not mind doing it once more exactly the same with all of my mistakes and disappointments. I hope that you will feel the same. Just live every moment in whatever place you find yourself and look for the coincidences. None of them are by chance. All of them are for good, even those that look and feel bad. Enjoy them, trying never to complain, because even the bad coincidences are for good. And finally, I wanted to end this on a poem that I wrote about my dad. And the poem, the Ithaca poem that he references, I've had that on my wall by my desk for over 10 years now. And I know many of his students and colleagues do as well, actually. This is called Angel in a Blue Suit because my dad always wore suits. I have never seen my dad in a pair of jeans. I think he may have owned one pair once in his life, and he wore them once and that was it. So no, my dad he just felt comfortable in a suit. So he was my angel in a blue suit. You were my angel in a blue suit, sitting at your desk to work and pray. You had these hands that were softer than a baby's embrace. You were my sun, my moon, my stars, my sky. When I hear your favorite Nana Mouskouri song, I still cry. You said that faith is accepting we are right where we're supposed to be. You taught me the importance of following blindly and trusting completely. You were my friend, my mentor, my pride. You were anyone who ever met you's shining light. You always asked, can I give you some unsolicited advice, knowing full well that I would still learn the lessons through paying the price. But when I said yes, you said it with compassion, without judgment or fight. And you think I didn't notice, but I saw your relentless giving and your passion for improving the world we live in and your belief that we can learn something and connect to anyone if we just asked questions and listened. One day in the hospital, just before you died, you looked at me and said, "My God, you get more and more beautiful with time." You assured me that one day I would indeed find my way out of the anger and sadness and that everything would be okay. You answered my teenage angst calls in the middle of the night. You spotted fear and shame that I just couldn't hide. You told me one day, right out of the blue, you made a promise and said, "I'll always be there with you." And I see now that that was true, because I see you in my son when he's smiling at me, and I see you in my daughter when she's winking at me. I see you in the audience when I'm reading my poetry, and I saw you on the path with me on the road to recovery. You were my editor-in-chief, my main source of relief. You were my Sunday morning storyteller in plaid flannel pajamas, and because of you, I was the only 10-year-old who knew about nephrology and dialysis. You were my angel in a blue suit, but also my rock. So when I got the call, your heart stopped. The bottom of my whole world dropped. You took your last breath. My hands held my head. Like a child, I was a mess, but I am because of you. And for that, I am blessed.